Yes, that's right. It's Joe here for Joyrider TV Live with some more Q&A just to get you ready for steaming it into your weekend, hopefully out on the water. Yes, that's right. The first speed stick update video of the season, of the year, is coming this weekend. So I thought in keeping with that as an opening theme, we would talk about how can you sail faster. All right, so the 3 stages of sailing faster, which I was referring to in the video title, this would be depending on your level of experience. So we'll start off with people who are quite new to sailing, so kind of basic level, going for a bit of speed. First thing, and this might sound like kind of a bit of an obvious one, but if you are going to be going for some speed, then do have a GPS device running, because if you're going to go and do it, you might as well know how fast you were going. The most straightforward way that you can track your speed would be on your mobile phone, running an app like Water Speed is a very good choice of app to use. You can, if you don't want all the stats, you can use the free version. Yeah, I would say stick with the free version, because there is a new Joyrider TV app coming out pretty soon. So for now, use Water Speed. It's very accurate, but stick with the free version unless you want all the stats. Yeah, so have your app running before you go out. And then, okay, so this is how you're going to take it from a normal sail. Like I would say, if you're quite new to sailing, then the easiest way that you will have been kind of having your sailing sessions would be something like, if this is the beach, you get the boat in the water and you push the bow off, you jump on the boat, sail off upwind, and then maybe come back downwind. So we're not really spending much time in, let's call it, the speed zone. So if we have our points of sail, we've got upwind, we've got our broad reach, which for most boats that we're talking about is our downwind angle. Then we've got the downwind angle for such boats as the Hobie 14 and the Hobie Wave, which would be straight downwind. But it's this area here, this is where we're going to unlock the extra pace. So what is a good way of going about doing this for your first ever time trying to make the boat go fast? All right, so I was having a think about this and thought, what is going to be the least intimidating 2 ways we can do it? First thing that is going to be a factor is how much wind is there. Big factor there. So if you've been going upwind and the hull's been lifting a little bit, then we're really on for a good time. But what you want to make sure is when you're on your upwind point of sail, before you go for the speed, you want to get the traveler in the right spot. That is going to make a bigger difference to how easy it is to control the boat than pretty much anything else. So how do we know if the traveler is in the right spot? Firstly, for the upwind, well, if you can get the main sheet in pretty tight and the hull's maybe just starting to lift a little bit, but not so much that you're constantly thinking, I need to sheet out here, then you can keep the traveler in the center. But if you feel that you're constantly needing to sheet out, then yes, let the traveler out. So here's our, not too high up, is it? No. So in light wind, or lighter wind when you're not really lifting the hull at all, then we keep the traveller in the center. But then if that hull is lifting a little bit, and you can't keep your main sheet in tight, and we're just talking about the upwind at the moment, then yes, ease the traveller out. And if we're just getting a feel for it, then you could go from it being in the center to easing the traveller all the way out to the toe strap, which is our halfway point, and then start working the main sheet from there. And then if from that position, if you feel the boat is now feeling a bit gutless, like it really doesn't want to go, then perhaps bring the traveller in a bit more again. That is really going to help. By the way, everybody who's watching live, I'm going to get to you in a jiffy. Just going to finish the first stage of going for speed before I get distracted into the live chat. All right, so yeah, so we've either got the traveller in the center or in the middle, or if you have put it in the middle and you're sailing the boat upwind and you're still feeling like you need to be easing main sheet all of the time to keep the boat under control, two things might be happening. One is it might be very windy, or two, it might be that you're not really sailing very close to the wind. So before you let the traveller out more than halfway, just try pointing the boat a little bit close to the wind and see if that allows you to bring the main sheet in anymore. Okay, so this is establishing a bit of easy sailing. Why are we sailing upwind before we start going for the speed? It's because on the upwind, everything is going to be happening a lot more slowly, and you're going to get a feel for whether you feel confident enough to start sending it a little bit to get the boat to allow it to kind of run. Because what we have to appreciate is the most delicate thing on the boat is the confidence of the people who are sailing the boat. If we try pushing the boat to go really fast too soon, and you're like, whoa, things are happening, I don't like it, then it might take you some time to get that confidence back. So looking after your confidence is very important, which is why we should get comfortable on the upwind point of sail in the conditions that we have on the day before we start pushing the boat to go faster, to see what sort of numbers we can get on the GPS. All right, so that is why we're starting off on the upwind. So first way that we could do this on the upwind, from the upwind, we've set the traveller in the correct position, so we've got the right amount of power on the upwind without having to ease too much main sheet. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to move back slightly on the boat. We need to kind of look at what our bow ride height is before we turn the boat off the wind. And we need to get a feel for, is it riding high? Is it level, or is it low? How are we going to get the feel for that? We're just going to look at where the water comes to on the leeward bow. So that's on the front of the boat on the far side. So if the water is up here, then chances are, we're still on the upwind. We're not on the upwind. We've started sailing a bit further off the wind, because if the water is getting close to the top of the bow, it means that we are not sailing very close to the wind, because when we're sailing close to the wind, all of the pressure from the wind is pushing to lift the bows. So if your bows are already driving down, that means that you're not really sailing upwind. But either way, getting further back on the boat is going to lift the bow slightly, making it much safer. So the big risk that going for the speed is going to put onto us is that as we bear away, the bows are going to drive down more. And if we drive them down so far that the water goes over the top, then yes, we might stop suddenly and flip the boat over. Let's not do that. That could prove to be an inconvenience. The other way is if we're going upwind and the water is very low down, like we can see a lot of bow, then I would say if we're about to start pushing for some speed, then we're already in a good spot on the boat. We're definitely sailing upwind because all of the pressure is lifting the bow up. This is a bit of an exaggeration. It would be more kind of like this. Yeah, so then go for it. But I would suggest in the early stages of pushing the boat to go faster, have the bow a little bit lifted before you start taking the boat off for the speed. All right, so we've got the traveller in the right position and we've got our bow ride height positioned nicely. So now we're ready to turn the boat from this upwind point of sail onto, we're going to start off on by turning just slightly down onto a close reach. Now, very important when you do this is that you ease sails. Most importantly, ease the mainsail. So as you pull the stick towards you to turn off the wind, ease the mainsail, the main sheet at the same time, because that is going to take all the pressure off the bows of the boat. Because as I said, as we turn off the wind, the natural tendency of the boat is for the bows to start diving down. We don't want that. So, ease the main sheet as you turn down and just turn down a few degrees. You'll feel the boat pick up speed. And then depending on how you're feeling about your confidence with it, you don't have to be on the trapeze at all. Both helm and crew could be sat on the boat at this time, but just be sat on the boat far enough back so that the bow isn't driving down, so that it is still slightly lifted. And then if you're there and you're feeling confident, then you could start to bring the main sheet back in. If you're not feeling confident and you're like, whoa, this is a bit quicker than I'm happy with, to get more of a feeling of being in control, what you can then do is let the traveller out further. So almost, you could let it out all the way. That is absolutely fine. Let the traveller out all the way and then bring the main sheet in. So that what we're trying to achieve is having some tension in the main sheet, because what that is going to do is that is going to put us in control of the boat. Yes. All right. So we've got the boat settled, traveller in the right spot. We've set our ride height. We've bore away onto this course, a close reach, and we've sheeted out as we've turned onto this course, making sure that our ride height is still good, which we can alter by moving our crew weight further towards the back of the boat. Or if it really feels like, if it's not particularly windy, if it feels like we're really popping a wheelie, then perhaps don't be quite so far back. And then we'll readjust the traveller if we need to. But otherwise, just adjusting the main sheet, bringing it in as tight as you can, but without you feeling like you're really starting to drive the bows down. And that would be a really good first stage in getting the boat going faster. Oh, yes. By the way, to commemorate the 2026 Global Speed Stick competition, I'm just modeling this year's t-shirt. Bit awkward. Yeah, there we go. We've got, it says 2026 Speed Stick, picture of a Catamaran Joyrider at the bottom. Get them from totaljoyrider.com. Also available as a rather nice zip hoodie. Okay, so checking in the live chat, I'd like to say hello and welcome to Alex, who is a new member at the Joyrider Academy. Yes, if you didn't know, over the winter, I have been crafting a series of classroom style tutorials on every single aspect of catamaran sailing, from the absolute fundamentals through to using a spinnaker, trapezing, racing. We've just gone into a fairly deep dive into different knots to use on the boat, splicing and things like that. And we've covered a lot, 18 modules in the Joyrider Academy. And you can sign up. Just hit the join button, which is just underneath the video viewer, and that will take you over to a page. It is €10 a month to join the Joyrider Academy. And I would say worth every penny if you want to really have the deepest understanding about everything to do with sailing your catamaran. Yes. All right, we've got RJ Fleet on board from Lake Benton, Minnesota, USA. Great to have you in the live chat. We've got Joss on board. Joss is kicking off the super stickers for today. Yes, if you're getting value from this as we go, do hit the super chat. It keeps these sessions ad-free. Thank you very much, Joss. Boris is on board, and Boris is also in there with the super chat. Thank you very much for that, Boris. Scott is dropping it in the slot. It's been a while since we've heard of Scott in these parts. Scott in Oregon, USA, and no stranger to sending it on the Hobie 16, on the Hobie 16, on the Hobie 16, on the speed stick. Yes, great to have you on board, Scott. Okay, Boris says, if you have the chance, and I'm sure you have been over this before, could you talk about how much downhaul versus wind speed based on the downhaul sticker that you use? Yes, let's go on to that before we go on to the next stage of the sailing fast. Oh, and I should say hello to Carl in Southeast Washington State, USA. Channel member Carl, great to have you with us, Carl. And Christian is with us. Happy Easter. Yeah, of course. It's a funny thing with being in Greece, but being from the UK. It's Easter in the UK on Sunday. I believe it's Good Friday today in the real world, but here in Greece, that isn't until next weekend. I know. Yeah. So it's quite a confusing time for me, as I'm sure you can imagine. But yes, happy Easter, and hope that the Easter egg hunt goes well. All right, so here we have got the custom Joyrider downhaul sticker. Oh yes. So the first thing with what are we talking about here with the downhaul? Yeah, sorry, I'm just getting organized. So the first thing that we need to establish, if we've got a nice calibration sticker like this, which we're going to put on our mast, is where should one be? It's a big question. So let's have a boat. And a mast. There we go. So what we want to establish, first thing we want to establish, and yes, as Boris said, we have been over this before, but we can obviously go over this again, how to set your minimum downhaul setting, because before we position our downhaul sticker, or if we haven't got a downhaul sticker, you could just take, instead of having a number 1, you could just take a piece of tape. If it's a black mast, a piece of tape, and put it on the mast where number 1 would be, which is marking the minimum amount of downhaul that you put on. Or if you've got a silver mast or a gold mast, if you're one of the lucky ones, you could just use a black permanent marker pen to put a mark on the mast where number 1 is. You could even write number 1 next to it. But how do we establish where that will be? All right, so what we'd do is, as this has actually turned out to be a bit of a Dart 18, which we just did the boat explainer video on last weekend. Very nice boat. What I've realized about the Dart 18, this is a tangent, in the UK especially. Now, I don't know if I should say this, but the Dart 18 compared to the Hobie 16 is very affordable. You get a lot of boat for your money when you buy a used Dart 18 for like £2,500. Because since I made that video, I saw a lot of used boats for sale. You get a really, really good boat, which is good enough to go and win the World Championships. Whereas for the same money with a Hobie 16, you'd be looking at something a lot older. It's an interesting fact that I found out. There we go. All right, so setting the minimum amount of downhaul. When you've put your mainsail up and you've hooked it in correctly, you'll see that there are creases in the mainsail, because without any downhaul on, the mainsail won't have any shape. So it will just be like a flag creased up, no shape to it. So we're pulling the downhaul on until we get rid of all of the creases in the front edge of the mainsail. Okay, so that is the first level of downhaul to put on. And we should do this when we're on the beach, as long as it's not windy. This isn't like we put the downhaul on the beach when we're about to go sailing. Oh no, we put the downhaul on the beach to establish where our minimum downhaul setting is. And then when we're launching the boat, we'd let the downhaul off completely, so that it's kind of like, if you've got the downhaul on, then your rig on your boat is like a loaded weapon. It's waiting to go off. Whereas no downhaul on, it's flaccid. It's not gonna upset things on the beach. Whereas downhaul on, loads of curve, bit of wind, and your boat could easily capsize on land. So that is why we're leaving the downhaul loose until you're actually ready to start sailing the boat. Okay, so we've pulled the downhaul on, we've pulled out the creases on the sail, and no more than that at this stage. All right, this is definitely what we went through before, but this is a very interesting point. What we'll then do is we're then going to attach the main sheet, and what we want to do is we want to pull the standing behind the boat, we want to pull the main sheet in until, if this is the back of the mainsail, we want to pull the main sheet in until the back of the mainsail lines up with the mast with this much downhaul on. So with the absolute minimum amount of downhaul on, we're going to pull the main sheet in that much. What's happening when we're pulling the main sheet in? It's pulling down, which the effect of that is going to be putting a few creases back into the front edge of the sail. Nothing like what we had before, but certainly creases are going to go back in. So having pulled the main sheet in to line the leech of the sail up with the mast. If we're looking from directly behind, then we're going to pull the downhaul on a bit more to get rid of these creases. And now that is our minimum setting. So what we'll do is perhaps where you have, let's clean up a little bit here. Here's the mast. And then you've pulled the downhaul on, and then here's the front bottom corner, the tack of the mainsail. This is where the mainsail is coming to. So here's the tack where the downhaul attaches to. And that is where we want our number one to be. Okay, so we've just established where the minimum amount of downhaul is. All right, so we're then going to have a range of downhaul. And basically, if you're in the amount of wind where you are feeling like on the upwind point of sail, you're having to ease the main sheet out, reasonably often, like whether you've got the traveller in the middle or you've set the traveller out, if you're ever having to ease the main sheet out, basically I've lost a boat. Oh gosh, this is tragic. Where did I put that? Ah, all right, beg your pardon. I lost a boat there for a second. Not quite as dramatic when it's in the classroom, but if you're flying the hull, that's all I wanted to do. If you're flying the hull and you're needing to sheet out to bring the hull back down, it's more efficient and it's going to make the boat sail faster if we increase the amount of downhaul. And to be honest, on most boats, the boats which aren't the very sort of technical racing boats, like the F-18, the Tornado, the A-class, everything else that isn't kind of similar to those boats, it's going to go from having the downhaul set on minimum to the downhaul set on maximum. So it might be that on your particular boat, the range that you have, how much is maximum downhaul? Pull it as hard as you can and then a bit more. Yeah, if you want to get the maximum downhaul on, I would suggest get the boat really close to the wind when you're in a bit of space, really crank the main sheet on. And when the main sheet's cranked on, this is if you've got two people on the boat, send the crew to really crank on the downhaul, because again, pulling on the main sheet is going to pull the mainsail downwards, which is going to make it much easier to get more downhaul on. And then likely place you're going to get it, like if this is on a 16, is if 1 is your minimum, then 3, maybe 3.5 is going to be your maximum. And when would you put it on 2.5? If kind of like, if you're occasionally lifting the hull and crew is going on the trapeze, then 2.5 is nice. But if you're constantly having to depower, then 3.5 is the right amount. There we go. I hope that that answers the question there, Boris. All right. So back into the live chat. Sorry, this is me squinting. All right. Christian says, I passed my 50 nautical mile trial today and the 15 knots plus wind trial. That is for the race to Alaska. Yes. Christian is taking on this fierce race and qualifying at the moment. self-writing remains. So just writing the capsize, I'm sure you're going to absolutely smash that. All right, we got Max from Germany. All channel members tuning in. Hi all. I saw Tarek. Yeah, Tarek was one of the guys I was coaching in Egypt. He got stuck. You said the crew position on the boat would be important in this case. Can you tell a little bit more? All right. To be honest, Max, I think I need a bit more in that question because I can't. I saw Tarek got stuck, and I said crew position on the boat would be important in this case. Yeah, you're going to have to give me a bit more question because I can't recall the part of the video which you're referring to. Okay, for those of you who haven't yet seen the video that is being referred to, it's because at the moment it's just on release for members only. It's one of the perks of being a Joyrider channel member is that as soon as I've finished making a video and I've uploaded the video, channel members will get it before the official release date. The release of this video is going to be on Wednesday next week. And it's a video where I am sailing. No, I'm not. I've been coaching Tarek, who's from Egypt, been coaching him for 4 days, and it's his first time out solo. We put the GoPro Max 2. This is a great camera. We put the GoPro Max 2 on the boat, on the boom. So I was basically spying on him while he was out sailing. And then when I got back into the studio here, I've been basically commentating on what Tarek is doing to say why things were happening when they were happening. And yeah, just some good feedback, which I thought for everybody who is watching Joyrider videos would find very useful indeed to see a real person making real person decisions on the boat. Some of them very good, some of them perhaps leading to results which we weren't looking for. Yeah. Okay, Max says he got stuck in the wind and had big problems getting the boat going. Yes. So why would I have said that crew position will help that? Yeah. So if you stall on the boat and you're struggling to get it going again, then yes, crew position can really help. One of the people that I watch on Instagram, I follow on Instagram, can't remember what the name is now, but it's a guy who's making absolutely brilliant videos. Someone in the live chat, you can tell me what these boats are called. The boats from Spain, which basically don't have a rudder at all. So these boats are all the steering is from sheeting and from crew position on the boat. So I watch quite a lot of this guy's videos on Instagram, and I find them absolutely fascinating. I can't wait to have a go on one of these boats. It's called something like a Catalina, but it's not a Catalina. If anybody knows, do pop it in the live chat or in the comments if you're not watching live. Yeah, but anyway, how can crew weight help you with steering the boat if you're stalled, especially? Doing a bit of practice of sailing rudderless is really good for working out what to do when you're stalled, because the main reason why you're stalled and why it's difficult to escape from being stalled is because the boat isn't moving forwards. And of course, when the boat isn't moving forwards, the rudders aren't working. So you can't use the rudders for steering. And if your rudders aren't in, like what was happening to Tarek quite a few times, was the rudders would be in the wrong position. So every time the boat moved forwards, it took the boat back up into the wind rather than to start sailing. But the question is, how can crew weight help with recovering from stalled? If we look at where the pivot point is on the boat, the kind of the fulcrum, the anchor point on the boat, if we had all the weight right on the bow, so we're sinking the bow, then the boat is very much going to anchor from this place, even though it's not actually an anchor. But because we're dragging that part of the boat more than anything else, as the wind is blowing down the boat, let's say no rudders, then the boat is naturally going to swing from this point. As we bring that point further back, that is going to be less of an effect. And so if we get to the back on the boat, we're now putting that anchor point, that pivot point towards the back. And if we see with the wind arrow that we've got here, we've got a load of boat forwards of that anchor point, which means the whole boat is kind of working as our center of effort, because that's what the wind is catching. And that center of effort is all forwards of the center of lateral resistance, which we've just put at the back, which means the likelihood that the boat is going to go from stalled like this, like, to being pivoted round. And like once we hit this kind of angle to the wind, then it's pretty inevitable that the boat is going to start going forwards. So at that point, we really need to have control of the rudders. And a big part of this recovering from stalled is to be able to spot early when we're sailing forwards and when we're sailing backwards. So if we're sailing backwards, reversing the rudders, which would mean if we're like here, we put the rudders what would be the wrong way to turn that way, so the boat backs round the corner. Whereas if we've come this far around and the boat's going to go forwards, then we want to have the rudders straight so that we're not going to head straight back up into the wind. Now, in the video coming on Wednesday with Tarek, he was actually at the point I think I was talking about. He was actually on the leeward side of the boat at the back. Now, that is like double your money anchor point at the back. So we've now got all of this, all of the boat, the windward hull, everything, and the anchor point is right back here. Even more effective to get going. Like if you happen to sail a Hobie 14, no turbo, no jib, and you get stalled to such a degree that you are getting rather frustrated, totally dump the mainsail and the traveller. And as long as you don't feel you're going to capsize backwards, go to the back on the leeward side and the boat will turn away from the wind, start sailing forwards. That is the most extreme example of a boat that stalls, I would say, the Hobie 14 no turbo. Yeah, so there we go. That is what's going on there, and moving our weight. So something that when I was working at Wildwind Sailing Holidays, almost 30 years working there, if I had to take a boat at the end of the day from a mooring, which was quite in deep water when it was windy, and I didn't want to have to unhook the boat from the mooring, then get onto the boat, I'd unhook the boat from the mooring, no rudders, a lot of the time, no sails. So I'd turn the boat side on to the wind like that. Here's the beach. And I would get onto the bow of the boat to get the mooring. And then I'd actually use the mooring, holding it, go towards the back of the boat with the mooring, which would mean the boat would turn off the wind. And then I'd go to the back of the boat on the leeward side. So the boat would bear right away, no rudders at all. A lot of the time, no sails. And the boat would start heading in towards the beach like this. And then when I wanted the boat to stop, I'd then on the leeward side, I'd then go up to the front of the boat and she'd turn into the wind. There we go. Nice story. Thank you very much. You're welcome. All right. There we go. All right. So I just read what Boris said. He said, because the previous question about the downhaul was from Boris, and Boris said, thanks as usual. The answer is always better than what we expect. Well, thanks for that, Boris, that vote of confidence. All right. Christian says, wait, add downhaul to depower and remove downhaul at the beach. Those points feel opposed to each other. Yes. All right. So the absolute downhaul nuts and bolts. If we have zero, let's write some numbers. 0, no downhaul at all, equals 0 power. So power. All right. So if we've got 0, then we've got 0 power. If we pull it on to the minimum, which we're calling number 1, then we've got max power. Yes. So 1 is putting the maximum amount of curve into the sail. And then as we go to 4, effectively, if we're talking in terms of power, we're going to have less the more that we pull on. But what we're also doing is making the sail more efficient, because as we pull on more, the sail is getting flatter, which is making it more efficient if you've got too much power. So there we go. All right. Yes. Okay. And at this stage in the game, I'd like to say if all this great information is helping, then super chat is a good way to let me know that this is helping. All right. Hans is tuned in. Oh yeah. Max says what Boris said. Thanks. You're very welcome. Okay. Hans is on board in somewhere in the Berlin area of Germany, I'm sure. Hello, cat sailors out there. Greeting from the French Alps. How wrong can you be? Not in Berlin, Germany at all. Lovely snow and plain sun and strong wind. Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Slightly jealous in a way. I've had a great winter season here in Greece, up the mountains, but because I had the surgery recently, my winter season came crashing to a halt. And the snow is still good here, which, you know, but I've had a good time, so I'm happy. Cheers. All right, we are going to go back into our let's get, oh, and sorry, Tim, I forgot to say hello to Tim, who would be Falls Lake, North Carolina, USA, Hobie 16 sailor. Thanks very much for the super chat. Keeping, or I think that might be a super sticker, keeping the Q&A ad free. All right. So we're going to go next level, getting the boat sailing faster. If you didn't catch it earlier, the first speed stick update video of the year is going to be out on Sunday. If you haven't yet logged the speed for this year, then if you do it today, I'm actually going to be filming the video tomorrow morning, Greek time tomorrow morning. So if you've got a speed to log, get that into me today. And yes, and make sure you do send a nice picture as well, or some video, because that always makes the video a lot nicer. If when I say here's Jim on his Taipan 4.9 and there's a picture of a Taipan 4.9 which with Jim on it, it's a bit nicer. So if you are going to get on the speed stick, try to have a picture, even if it's just a picture of your boat on the beach with the cover on. Something makes it better than nothing. Okay. All right. So thanks very much for the super chat there, Christian. 0 equals 0, 1 equals 100, 4 equals 21, 20%. Catamaran math. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that is that's a good breakdown of how those downhaul numbers are working. But yeah, it's a progressive amount of depowering once we pull beyond the minimum. But when the boat's on the beach, or when you're launching the boat, just leave the downhaul completely loose unless there really is very little wind. Because once you've got that big curve in the sail, if you're wheeling your boat down the beach and you get a gust, that big curve could capsize your boat on the beach. The same thing goes for when you bring the boat out of the water. Like you'll see in any of the videos that I've made, when I'm coming into the beach, when Sailing Holidays Vasiliki Greece opening soon, you will see that as I'm approaching the beach, I'll say to the crew, let off the downhaul, let off the jib, so that when we turn the boat into the wind, like 0 downhaul, we can still sail, but it just means when we turn the boat into the wind, there'll be no shape in the sail. A lot of the time, if you have been sailing like full power with the downhaul on 4, and you've got your main sheet in reasonably tight, you can actually release the downhaul completely. And as long as you've still got the main sheet in tight, it's going to keep that shape in the sail, keep it downhauled. And then it's actually going to be the act of letting the main sheet off, which is actually letting off the downhaul. There we go. All right. So next level, going for some speed. And this is kind of like going about it in, let's say, a different way. So there's the wind. As we know, the most powered point of sail is the beam reach, or the half wind point of sail, where we're sailing the boat directly across the wind. So this is going to be a good point of sail if we are going to want to put in a big speed. But again, we're talking about this in terms of perhaps if you're less confident, slightly less experienced. So what we'll do, we'll get out on the water and we'll completely release the jib, the main sheet, and the traveller. And then while the boat's still moving forwards, we'll turn the boat so that the wind is coming side on. How are we going to judge that? Because the wind indicators on the boat are only showing our apparent wind, which are going to be affected by us going forwards. So what we need is a bit of a gauge. If you're sailing on a lake or somewhere without big waves, then what we'll have is the way the wind is blowing is going to be the same way that the chop is going, the small waves are going. So we know if we're sailing across those small waves, then we're going to be pretty much on a beam reach. Another way that we could look at it is if we've already been out sailing for some time, we've been sailing upwind, watching the telltales on the jib for our course. Perhaps we've also sailed downwind, watching the wind indicators on the front, keeping those going about across the boat at 90 degrees because that's our apparent wind, the wind which is created by a combination of the true wind and our induced wind that we create by going forward. So that's the apparent wind that we're sailing on when we're going downwind. And so if we've sailed on these two courses, if we point the boat directly halfway between those two courses, we know that that is going to be roughly a beam reach. A beam reach is always going to be a little bit rough. You know, it's not going to be, all right, this is a perfect beam reach. It might be a few degrees up or down. So when we've established where this beam reach is, next thing to do, which is nice, is to have something to aim for, like a buoy or something on the land, like a particular building or something. So what we're going to do is we're just going to keep the boat pointing at that object, and then when we're starting to feel ready, we can start doing something with the sails, which is going to make things happen. So if we've been sailing with the traveller out, we'll leave the traveller out. Let's get our traveller in the out position. There we go. We'll leave the traveller out. And to start with, again, we're looking after our confidence here. To start with, we're going to pull the main sheet in with the traveller in the out position and just see how it feels. Again, we're paying attention to our ride height, trying to make sure that we've got a good amount of bow above the water. So on most boats, that would be, so you can see a good foot of bow above, like the deck of the boat, a good foot above the water. On a Hobie 16 or 14, it would be significantly less, but so that we're not in risk of sticking the nose in. And working the main sheet, you'll soon get a feeling for when you pull the main sheet in, the bow might start dipping a bit. When you let the main sheet out, the bow might start lifting a bit. So you're really using the main sheet as a good pitch controller. So sheeting in, okay, don't like that so much. Sheeting out, of course, if you're sheeting in, the bow's going down. If you can get back on the boat at all to keep that bow in that sweet spot, then that means you're going to be able to keep more power on, which means you're going to be able to sail the boat faster. I would say for pretty much, if depending on what type of boat you're sailing, but I would say 15 knots is pretty achievable for everyone. You know, even if it's your first day, obviously depends on how much wind you've got. And if you're sailing a boat which is a bit slower, like if you're sailing an inflatable catamaran, or if you're sailing a Hobie wave, or something in that kind of category, then 15 knots is going to be getting towards the top speed. Doesn't mean they're any less fun. It's all relative. But if you're sailing let's say a 15-foot or bigger fiberglass boat, 15 knots definitely on the cards. Or not to rule out the roto molded boats as well, the getaway. I think getaways have been up to 20 knots now. So yes. Yeah, so just bringing the main sheet in, moving your weight back if the bow's dipping, and just trimming the main sheet against the bow. Okay, so that would be the next stage. What would be the next stage on from there would be, if you're feeling confident and you think, I think we can give it a bit more, bring the traveller in a little bit. Just bring it in a small amount at a time. So bring it in by another 2 inches and then work the main sheet from that position. And if you think after a minute or so, oh, I think we could give it a bit more, then keep repeating that. But pay attention to the height of the bow. And if the wind is gusty, and you can see like up here, the chop is closer together, which will make the water look a bit rougher, might be a bit darker. If it's a really sunny day, might even make it look shinier because there's more ripples closer together. If you're coming into water like that, then do be aware that you're about to be hit by a gust. So de-power before you get into that area of stronger wind. Yeah. And then if you're feeling confident at this stage, the crew could be out on the trapeze as well. And then you could be really toasting some marshmallows down that beam reach, having a great time. One method that is used in the Dart 18 class is actually to give the crew, let's zoom in. Here we are. Let's have the crew. The crew would be out on the trapeze here, single trapeze on the Dart 18, if you didn't know. Watch the boat explainer video for more. Crew is here, helm on the trampoline, that's his head. And the crew on the beam reach will take the stick. So I actually started off my catamaran sailing career crewing a Dart 18. And back in those days, the race courses were triangles rather than upwind, downwind, which meant that you'd get two legs of the course, which would be a pretty juicy beam reach. And if it was windy, I knew that once we hit the beam reach, I'd get the stick. So I was steering the boat. Absolutely great when I was like 12 years old or something, to be steering a boat going pretty quick. And so crew is steering, helm on the trampoline with the main sheet, two hands, really working the main sheet to keep that pitch controller nice, to keep the angle of heel correct as well, and just to keep the boat under control. So you could do that on any type of boat, like on a Hobie 16, on a Tornado, on anything that has a trapeze. So on a Windrush 14, anything with a trapeze. There we go. That is the next stage of sailing fast. All right, we've got Joss in the live chat. Is sailing a bit downwind with a Jenica faster than a beam reach? Ooh, hot topic. Maybe not hot topic, but certainly an interesting one. Is it quicker? It really depends on how much wind there is. I would say if you're sailing a boat, and the most, what would you call it? The most abundant boat that uses a spinnaker these days is the Formula 18. So if you're sailing a Formula 18 and there are, let's say, 16 knots of wind, you're going to go faster with the spinnaker up than you would do on a beam reach, because with the spinnaker up, you're effectively doubling your sail area, and 16 knots of wind on a Formula 18 isn't enough to be able to really start gunning it on a two sail reach. Because one of the reasons for this is because on a Formula 18 or similar boats, the jib isn't particularly big. On a Hobie 16, the jib is relatively big, which is why on a beam reach, the 16 will get going perhaps earlier than on an F18 with the small jib. So F18, spinnaker up, 16 knots. Once you start getting into the 20 knots, 22 knots of wind, then it becomes pretty close, because on a spinnaker boat, once you get into that much wind, like in 15 knots of wind, spinnaker up, you can still sail on a fairly decent reach. Especially if you're trapezing or double trapezing with the spinnaker up, you can get on a good reach, which means you can really turn that sail area into speed. Whereas once you start getting more wind, like over 20 knots, then you are restricted on your course, which means you are going to have to sail a lot deeper downwind with the spinnaker up, which might not be as quick as the 2-sail reach, but it's pretty close in speed. Like on the C2, I've had 24.5 knots on a 2-sail reach, and I've had 24.5 knots on a downwind course like this with the spinnaker up. So I think you do get to a stage where the hulls don't want to go any quicker. So, or something dramatic has to happen to get them going beyond that point. Okay, I just like yeah, so I hope that is ambiguous enough, non-committal answer. Less wind, kite up for more speed, but like if you get to 25 knots especially, then no need for the spinnaker for the big send. Although putting the spinnaker up in 25 knots, if you've got the crew out on the trapeze and you are able to control the boat, you're going to go fast. Okay, I'd just like to say thanks very much to Carl for the super sticker, keeping the Q&A ad-free. And yes, we have been going for an hour now. So if anybody else is finding this useful, the super sticker is there. And that is keeping the Q&A ad-free. All right. Hussein is here. Hussein, who I was coaching along with Tarek in Egypt 2 weeks ago. Thought I was on time at 6:30. Didn't know summertime is already in Greece. Yes, our clocks did change last week. It is a mess this time of year with different people's clocks changing on different weeks. But I think we're, yeah, there we are. But good to have you on board, Hussein, as always. All right, Boris says, all right, I think we'll leave the fast sailing there. Or we could just finish it off with, I did say on the title of the video, the 3 stages of fast sailing. The last one, right, we have talked, thanks to Joss's question, we've talked a bit about the spinnaker. But if we talk about full send down the mine shaft, which is clearly going to be stage 3, what we're looking at, starting off on the beam reach. Here we go. Crew position, very important when we're doing this. And so beam reaching like we were in stage 2, but let's get beam reaching double trapezing. This means we can keep more power on and getting as far to the back of the boat as possible. And then if we're beam reaching and we're able to lift the hull being lifted means that we are misspending energy from the wind. What does this mean? It means that the energy that is being used to lift the hull could be transferred into speed if we take the boat further away from the wind. So what we're trying to do is get the boat as far away from the wind as possible, but keeping the windward hull so that it's just out of the water. Yeah, so ideally what we're looking for is to have just the tip of the windward rudder blade in the water as we're going off down the mine shaft. So every time the hull lifts, what are we going to do? We are going to ease the main sheet. And as we ease the main sheet, we're going to turn more downwind. So reason we're easing the main sheet is because otherwise, when we turn downwind more, the bow is going to dip. And that is going to be like putting the brakes on. So we're easing the main sheet to make sure that we're not mowing the lawn with the bows of the boat. We're keeping the bows riding reasonably high, bearing away more. And then when we've bore away more, hull is still out, we'll then sheet in again to give it more juice. there we go. Stage 3, back to the live chat. All right. Oh, and thanks very much to Hussein for the super sticker, keeping the Q&A ad free. Okay. So I was trying to hit. So Boris says, my first question was pointing out, let's say for an 812. Oh, what we talk about? Couldn't get the second time. Right. Okay. So matching the numbers on the downhaul sticker to wind strength specifically. So I would say number 1 on the downhaul sticker, which is our minimum, that would be, let's say, from 0 up to 8, 9, 10 knots of wind, but up to the point where you start getting a little bit of heel on. So not even the hull coming out, but the hull just starting to lift slightly. That is when we want to pull the downhaul on beyond 1. And so in 10 knots, we'll pull it to number 2. Let's just establish first that from 1 to 4 is the full range that we have available. So, you know, from like when you've had the boat on the beach, you've established where number 1 is, you've put your downhaul sticker on the mast, and then you've absolutely cranked the downhaul on as hard as it will go, using the main sheet as well to pull the sail down more, which is going to help you to get more downhaul on. So let's say number 4 isn't necessarily number 4, but for the sake of this discussion, it is. This is the range. So 10 knots, flying the hull. So soon as we hit, like, once the hull is not flying the hull, lifting slightly, then we're going to pull the downhaul on to number 2. All right. So once it's enough wind to actually lift the hull upwind, so let's say 14 knots of wind. So this wind speed in the lower teens is effectively quite close together for the downhaul. So number 4 would be, if we're sailing upwind, Hobie 16, 16 knots of wind would go pretty much full on. And what that will mean is you'll be able to keep your traveller in the middle, keep your main sheet cranked going upwind by having the downhaul on absolutely maximum. So 10 knots, let's say 10 knots, you're at number 2, 16 knots, you're at number 4. So obviously beyond 16 knots, you're still at number 4, but then you might be starting to let the traveller out to deal with that extra wind. Okay. Yeah, don't worry about having to repeat things, Boris. If that doesn't cover it, do let me know. All right, we've got Charles on board. Thanks very much, Charles, for the super chat, keeping the Q&A ad free. All right, and I think we are getting into the final upwind leg of this Q&A today, because we've been going for 1 hour and 10 minutes. All right. Charles says, you've inspired my brother Noel and I to reassemble our Hobie 16 that we haven't sailed since 2001. Oh, wow, that's 25 years ago. Nice. All right, I'm so pleased that that has been an effect of the videos. We sailed it twice in the last month. Thanks for the inspiration lesson and mental refreshers. You are very welcome, Charles. This is absolutely the aim of what I'm doing. Like, my whole working life now is dedicated to people like you who are getting either back out on the water or discovering this great sport for the first time. And I'm just trying to what would you say it is, inspire people to get out on the water, and then once they're inspired to go out on the water, to give them the information that is going to help them to have a better time when out on the water. So thanks very much, and it's so good to know that the good work that I'm doing here in Vasiliki Lefkas, Greece, is hitting the spot. So thanks for that, Charles. All right, Boris says, thanks again. You're very well indebted for the knowledge you share. All right, very grateful. Thanks very much, Boris. Always a pleasure. All right, we got Felix on board. Thanks for all the amazing advice and knowledge. And just when you thought I was about to hang this one up, not just yet, because I have got a preloaded question. And I think it's quite an interesting one, actually. It's about the dolphin striker. Yeah, all right, just give us a second. I'm just having a bit of a tidy up here. Yeah, so I think while I'm tidying up, just to repeat the news just in, the Speed Stick first update video of the year is coming on Sunday. If you have been out with a GPS, it has to be from this year. If you've been out with a GPS, then you can get on the stick in time for the update video, because I'm filming the update video tomorrow morning Greek time, which means you need to get your result into me today, so that you can then be in the update video. That is coming on Sunday. And then the next exciting video that is coming is on Wednesday. If you're not a channel member and you don't have access to that already, I haven't done one like this before, actually. It was Tarek, who I was coaching in Egypt 2 weeks ago. He went out after we did 4 days coaching. Then he went out for a solo sail, some good wind, 12 to 14 knots of wind, out on his own. And I was spying on him using a camera on the boat. And then when I got back to the studio, I've been through the video and commentated on everything that he's doing. So I think if you're at the stage in the game when you're about to start looking at going out solo, especially for your first time, this could really highlight some interesting points, which might save you a few moments, let's call it. All right. So there we go. That is what's coming up. All right. So this is from Da Vinci FPV. Very good. Who says, why is the dolphin striker so important? All right. This is a great question. I keep losing my boat. Did I leave it there? Yeah, lost my boat. Unbelievable. I can't believe I've lost my boat. Sorry, this is tremendously unprofessional, I think you'll find. So I think what the dolphin striker does is best explained like in a Hobie 16 sort of context. All right, I see Duke is on board. Duke says that bar under the boat attached to the dolphin striker is for picking up the crew in the water. There we are. So, all right, we're changing color. We seem to have gone off the rails here. Everything was going so jolly well, and then so there we go. We've got our hulls, we've got our front beam, and the front beam on the boat is got a lot of curve in it on a 16, less curve on everything else. And then into the middle of the front beam, we have got the mast. And as you would think, having the mast sitting on there is putting an absolute shed load of pressure downwards through the front beam. It's pushing so very, very hard down the front beam, which means if the front beam didn't have any support, it would snap. Yeah, on a boat which is powerful like a 16, the Hobie 16, or any boat that has a dolphin striker, is because the boat is of a width that means it is essential to have one. The dolphin striker, let's say this arrow is actually the bar of the dolphin striker, and then that goes to the dolphin striker. What would they call that in France? Like a transverse rod, like that, which is basically pushing back upwards, supporting the weight of the rig pushing down. So that is why we need a dolphin striker. Now, on certain boats, they don't have dolphin strikers. Like on the really early Hobie 14s, no dolphin striker, because just the mainsail, and the early 14s didn't use the trapeze. It made the boat more simple, cheaper to produce, and it wasn't seen as necessary. But when the trapeze was added to the 14, that meant more power could be kept on, which means there's more load going down through the front beam, which means, yes, dolphin striker required. Another boat which famously doesn't have the dolphin striker, or Ranger boats, is, again, we're talking about the Dart 18 today. Transverse rod. Thank you, Duke. So the Dart 18, it's an 18-foot boat, no dolphin striker. Why not? It's because it isn't particularly wide. So the amount of front beam on the Dart 18, oh gosh, what am I doing? All right, is pretty short. Sorry, this is a terrible drawing. Which means that it's not as necessary to have the dolphin striker there, because there's not that span that we're trying to look after. So that is the why we have a dolphin striker. Now, does it ever need to be tweaked? Generally, no. If you're sailing a boat like a Hobie 16, how do you know if the dolphin striker is too loose, or anything actually, is if you can physically see that there's no tension in it. So if you grab the bar and it rattles because there's no tension in it, then it's too loose, and it means it's not supporting the job which it's meant to do. The way that you know it's been too loose for a while is if in this part of the beam here, if cracking is starting to appear, that means your dolphin striker has been too loose, and the beam has gone from this to this, which has meant that middle part has cracked. There we go. Okay, I'd just like to say thanks very much to Jens, channel member Jens, coming in with a super sticker, keeping the Q&A ad-free. Thanks very much, Jens. Great to have you on board. All right, so the other thing that we could say about the dolphin striker, and this is if we're getting a bit more technical, I'm not going to clean up, I'm just going to put that there, is as we put more tension on the dolphin striker, this actually changes the geometry of the boat. How could this be? What happens is as we bend, so if we tension the dolphin striker more, it bends the front beam more, which lifts this part of the boat and effectively shortens the distance between the holes here, which brings the bows inward. So each boat has a very much a sweet spot of how the hulls like to be lined up. Unfortunately for us, when boats leave the factory, even if it was 30 years ago, it will have been put in a jig and lined up with the beam on to make sure the dolphin striker has got the right amount of tension in there. Adjusting the dolphin striker tension without taking some pretty serious measurements can result in some pretty serious results. Like if you over tension a dolphin striker, like on a Hobie, then what you're going to get is the beam is going to get damaged here and here, which again could result in a broken beam. So let's, if it's fine, let's just give it a little twang, make sure it's not loose, and then we'll leave it there. Why is it called a dolphin striker, says Hussein. This comes from old tall ships, like the merchant ships that used to sail the sea, master and commander sort of thing. And yeah, this definitely calls for a badly drawn picture just to finish off. And these ships, do it in red, of course. There's the ship. Okay, I said it was going to, oh, these are planks of wood. Nice. All right. And these ships have a bowsprit like that comes off. And because the bowsprit is what the, oh, there we go. We're not doing too badly here. There's the mast and the sail going across like this. And because the bowsprit is supporting quite a mighty amount of load through the foresail or holding the mast up, then that would actually have the dolphin striker on there. And there it is. But why is it called the dolphin striker? I suppose because if you're a dolphin, you are going to have to watch your head, because otherwise you might be struck. So there we go. All right, I'm going to leave that there for today, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in. I think this has been a very interesting session. If you are not yet a channel member and enjoying the classroom series, then and you want to get a deeper understanding about everything about catamaran sailing, then just hit the join button, which is underneath the video window. Otherwise, I'll see you on Sunday with a speed stick update video, or on Wednesday with a very good video of Tarek taking one for the team. All right, I'll see you soon with some more. Have a great weekend.